So today I want to talk about 3D model optimization. What is it and why does it matter? When I say optimization, what I'm referring to is reducing the overall file size of a 3D asset. There are other optimizations that might happen for different reasons, but today we're going to focus on optimization as it relates to reducing file size. So a 3D model is made up of two different parts. You have the mesh and you have the textures. So the mesh is the actual structure of the asset. It's the thing that looks like almost like the outline of a topiary that you would see before the plant grows on it. Meshes are made up of thousands, if not millions of polygons, and all those polygons take up file size. So the way we reduce the file size is by decimating that mesh. We reduce the total number of polygons that exist in the mesh. The second thing that can happen is you can optimize textures. And textures are the skin of the asset. And these are optimized by resizing, cropping, and then applying compression the same way you would apply compression to a JPEG. So by performing those two actions, you can reduce the file size of an asset. Now, why does it matter? Most people, when they're talking about optimization, are thinking about it like, okay, I need to optimize to get into game engine, or I need to optimize before I go to e-commerce or an advertising unit. But actually, optimization can be important much earlier on in the process. We're finding that many of the brands that work with us end up optimizing assets so they can better collaborate with internal stakeholders who don't currently utilize 3D or have access to a 3D program. Many of the brands that we work with that are designing in 3D right now are actually taking the original designs from a 2D Illustrator file. So now you've got a designer who works in 2D who's trying to communicate with someone who works in 3D, and rather than sharing a 3D model back and forth, they're sharing just a 2D render of the asset. This can be enormously frustrating for both parties because the 2D designer is looking at this and going, this isn't more efficient, and the 3D designer is going, they don't understand what I'm doing, I'm only showing them images. So by optimizing an asset so it's light enough to share, similar to a proxy file, the way you would, when you're editing a movie, you're not working with the actual raw movie footage, you're working with a optimized proxy file that's much, much smaller. It's also important during the design process. The other places that you're going to want to optimize an asset for are e-commerce, game engine, advertising units. Most of those places require file sizes that are under 10 megabytes. Game engine, it could be a lot larger, but as you add more and more assets to it, you're going to want to make sure that poly count's low. You're going to want to make sure you've got a small number of draw calls, and draw calls refer to the number of times that the render engine needs to pull a separate file. So if you've got a bunch of materials or a bunch of textures on an asset, that can be problematic when it comes to performance on a game engine. So optimization is important throughout the entire life cycle of the product, not just at the very end.